Living Witness, the 23rd episode of Star Trek Voyager's 4th season, is sort of a crash course in history versus social memory and the limits of trying to study the past. It opens with Captain Janeway explaining to a potential trading partner what's up.
When diplomacy fails, there's only one alternative: violence.
His people want to grab some land at the expense of a rival population and ask for help taking out their leader. But a little regime change is so half-assed. Janeway isn't playing around here.
Biogenic weapons.
Captain.
This is no time for half measures. You wanted victory. You're gonna get it?
Why help with someone else's coup when you can single-handedly commit genocide? Go big or go home, and it's a long way home. But all of this is a holographic representation in a museum. Centuries prior, Voyager visited their world, and this is history as they have reconstructed it. Because history isn't the past objectively, but a reconstruction of the past based on available evidence. What artifacts survive? What did people write down? Who did that writing? And as closely as you can determine, why did they write it? This episode really illustrates how the study of history is like looking at the past through a narrow window. You know there's vastly more than you can see, but you can only make determinations based on what is visible. And this version of history is deeply rooted in the culture and politics of that world.
Even today, 700 years later, we are still feeling the impact of the Voyager encounter.
And of course, as in many wars and atrocities over the ages, there's a racial factor.
I'm only on this commission because you needed a token Kyrian.
Please, this isn't about race.
It's always about race.
One of these guys called in Voyager to take out one of these guys, and it's been a sore point between the two groups ever since.
The Vascan leaders proceeded to occupy our lands, forcing my people into subservience. It took centuries for us to undo the damage that Captain Janeway had done, and the Kyrian struggle for equality is far from over.
The accepted history aligns with and underpins the prevailing political order. Their people have a defining narrative. Their leader at the time is a heroic figure, a martyr to the cause of peace and justice.
The great Tedran, a man of wisdom and peace, a servant of his people.
How can you prove that it's true?
Take a closer look. The evidence is all around you.
Some musty fossils and a recreation. That doesn't prove anything.
We've just uncovered an artifact that's going to confirm everything you've seen here.
The artifact in question turns out to be the holographic doctor's program, both a witness and a repository of data. Far from confirming the long-held and politically contentious narrative at the heart of the exhibit, the doctor finds it to be
pure fiction. This is absurd.
This creates some difficulties. You can do real, honest, evidence-based historical study and still be completely wrong. It's just the nature of it. But as soon as you have competing narratives with equally valid evidence, you have to find ways to reconcile that evidence.
But Kyrians were the aggressors? No, that can't be right.
Captain Janeway called this meeting to figure out how we could extricate ourselves from the conflict and still maintain the trade agreement with the Vascans. But we weren't on their side, and we certainly never attacked you.
But true objectivity isn't really possible. We all have blind spots and biases. We just have to recognize them and try to get past them.
Obviously, events have been reinterpreted to make your people feel better about themselves. Revisionist history. It's such a comfort.
We were not the aggressors in the Great War. We were the victims.
I can prove to you I'm right. The medical tricorder, the artifact you have on display. If you just let me...
At least to be a historian. Much less self-awareness is required of activists and political hacks, but the determination between them can be itself a bit subjective at times. And when stepping out of the rigors of historical scholarship and into cultural memory and politics, perceptions of history can be highly relevant, even if they're woefully wrong.
This is a reasonable extrapolation from historic record. But if you'd like to point out any inconsistencies...
Inconsistencies? I don't know where to begin.
Because it's not just a story about the past. It's a story about who we are. When you start digging up things that change that perception, you're messing with how people see the world and how they see themselves. People can get very defensive about that.
Stop this! We know about the hologram. This museum is filled with lies.
Stop! Listen to me!
We've listened long enough!
In this instance, that outburst of rage settles and they find a new respect for each other and peace. When the heroes and martyrs are revealed to have been people just like anyone else, perhaps even complete scumbags all around, some of the myth falls away. Of course, this is dramatized. Rarely does a single find completely upend our entire understanding of the past. But it's not unusual. Now I'm going to have Tom Jones running through my head all day. But it's not unusual for new information to come to light which forces us to amend that understanding, to change history in a way. And that's where this comes in. The Black Hills have changed hands several times over the last few hundred years. American white guys, not unlike myself, took it from the Lakota. Before that, the Lakota pushed the Cheyenne and Crow off. There's always a fight for the prime real estate. General Custer's expedition triggered a gold rush, and even though the region was off limits for settlement according to treaty, people want to get rich, and so they flooded in searching for the shiny rocks, and with them came families, towns, farms, permanent settlement, treaty be damned. The timeline for all of this is fairly well established. Except in 1887, when two brothers, Louis and Ivan Thoen, dug up what has come to be known as the Thoen Stone. It's a brief record of 7 men who came for gold, inscribed by Ezra Kind, last survivor of the group, dated 1833. This single data point doesn't radically change our view of the settlement of the American West, but it does indicate that people knew there were substantial gold deposits on tribal land here long before the U.S. Army sent Custer to do a survey. Many dismissed it as a hoax, not least because who would carve a message when they're being hunted by Indians?
Look, if he was dying, he wouldn't bother to carve ARG.
But various investigations into it have found that the names tracked real people that were in the area at the time, and the stone was not carved by the people that found it. It's probably legit. The point of this being that our concept of the past is constructed with a lot of missing pieces. And if our understanding of fairly recent times has gaps, imagine how big the holes are going back hundreds or thousands of years. This is not to say that ancient history is bullshit or that stories about Atlantis or Lemuria are just as valid as ancient Greece, only that history is a puzzle with a bunch of missing pieces, and sometimes misleading box art. While we categorize history into a sequence of cause and effect in a narrative chain looking back, most of the past was just individual people doing whatever made sense to them on any given day. The grand narrative is a construct that comes later, a way of making sense of it. But it's easy to get attached to the construct, whether as a historian or just a human being. And like the curator in this Voyager episode, we have to find a balance between being open enough to new information to change our understanding of the world, but not so open that we wholly buy into every attempt at revisionism on flimsy evidence.
If we were mistaken about that, I wonder if we might also be wrong about Voyager itself.
History isn't just a mess, but a compounded mess described by people looking through a narrow tube. Even the most vile events and people have to be understood on their own terms. You can't study history from a place of hate. You can't understand your subject if you can't separate personal disagreement or even revulsion from an analysis of the motives of the people involved. And because of that, when someone is arguing a historical point that you're 100% certain is wrong, find out why they think that. Maybe they just don't know what they're talking about, but maybe they have a valid perspective or information you hadn't considered. This particular hilltop is not where the Thoen Stone was found. That site proved to be a little busier than I expected, so I came up to this rock instead.